We are entering the final phase of the 2025 bull market. Everything is changing. The way institutions invest, the way that smart money moves, the way that serious investors build wealth, and so does the way that people approach DeFi. We're entering what I call the DeFi optimization era. And if you understand what I'm about to show you, you could position yourself to capture returns that most crypto investors will completely miss. But here's what most people don't realize. There's a 40% ignorance tax that DeFi investors are paying right now, and it's costing them tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes even hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost returns. So I'm about to show you exactly how to eliminate that tax and implement a system that's generating 60 to 80% APR for sophisticated investors while they retain 80% of their earnings and spend just 2 to 3 hours per week managing it. Now I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds too good to be true, and I get it. I was skeptical too when I first discovered this approach 4 years ago. But here's the thing, it's not magic, it's just a better system. And I have the data from over 20,000 users to prove it works. But before we dive in, let me tell you who I am and why you should consider listening. I've been in the DeFi space for 4 years. I'm the founder of Metrics Finance, which is the largest liquidity pool software platform out there with over 20,000 monthly users. I've consulted with small funds and advised larger institutional players on their DeFi strategies. Most importantly, I've seen both sides of this market. I've watched retail investors make the same costly mistakes over and over again, while institutions quietly implement systematic approaches that actually work and profit. And that's exactly what we're going to cover today. I'm going to show you why 95% of DeFi investors are using strategies that worked in 2023, but are destroying portfolios in 2025. Then I'm going to reveal the one approach that's actually working for serious investors who want consistent, risk-adjusted returns. Let me ask you something, and I really want you to think deep about this question. How much money do you think you have left on the table in DeFi over the past year? Well, if you're like most crypto investors I talk to, you probably started with hodling, maybe you moved into staking, you might have tried your hand at some liquidity pools, or even trading. And if you're being honest, your results probably have been inconsistent at best. From an inside look, here's what I see happening every single day. Smart people with significant crypto portfolios, we're talking $50,000, $100,000, $500,000 or even more, who are essentially just flying blind in DeFi. They're jumping from strategy to strategy, chasing the latest yield farm, getting wrecked by impermanent loss, and wondering why they can't seem to generate consistent returns, or their friend that's just holding Bitcoin with a similar amount is profiting more than them. And look, I don't blame you. The DeFi space is deliberately confusing. There are thousands of protocols, hundreds of strategies, and everyone's telling you something different. One guru says just hodl, another says stake everything, and someone else is promising 500% APR on some new farm that will probably be gone next month. Meanwhile, you're watching your portfolio swing wildly, dealing with failed transactions, bridge exploits, high impermanent loss, depreciation from random assets that probably shouldn't be on the market, and wondering if you're just not cut out for this. But here's what's really happening. You're paying what I call the ignorance tax, and it's costing you 40% of your potential returns. Let me break this down for you. Based on the data from our actual clients, before they started working with us, the average DeFi investor loses 15% of their returns to divergence loss. That's when your LP tokens lose value compared to just holding the underlying assets, meaning something like Bitcoin might outperform your LPs, despite all the risk and all the hard work you put in. Then they lose another 25% to common mistakes, choosing bad assets, messing up bridge transactions, sending funds to the wrong addresses, getting into rugs, timing entries and exits poorly, so on and so forth. That's a 40% tax on your returns that you're paying simply because you don't have a systematic approach. Now I want to think about what that actually means for a sec and let that sink in. If you have a $100,000 portfolio and you could be earning 60% returns, but you're paying the 40% ignorance tax, you're leaving $24,000 on the table every single year. Over the course of 5 years, that is $120,000 in lost wealth. And here's the kicker, 2025 is likely the last full bull market year we'll see for a while. This is your window to accumulate serious wealth before we enter the bear market conditions, where the focus shifts to capital preservation and lower market neutral returns. But what if I told you there's a way to eliminate the ignorance tax completely? What if you can generate 60 to 80% APR, retain 80% of your earnings, and do it all in just 2 to 3 hours per week? That's exactly what I'm going to show you today. Let's dive in. Now you have several options when it comes to generating returns in DeFi, and I do want to be completely objective here. I'm going to show you how the 5 main strategies stack up against each other across the metrics that actually matter. Let me walk you through this systematically. We're going to evaluate each strategy on 5 criteria: time investment per week, APR potential, retained earnings after losses, upside potential, and risk-adjusted returns. And the first is hodling. This is where most people start. 0 time investment, which is nice. APR potential is 0 because of course you're not earning anything on your assets. You retain all of your assets because of course you have no earnings and there's no impermanent loss. Upside potential is pretty high. If your token's moon, you get the full benefit, but the risk adjusted returns, they're relatively poor because you're missing out on all the yield opportunities within DeFi. Next off, we have staking. Maybe some of you have tried this. This is slightly more involved, probably about 30 minutes to an hour per week. The APR potential is lower at around 3 to 15%. You retain 100% of your earnings because you're not in a liquidity pool. You're just single-sided with one asset. You have very high upside potential since you still own the underlying tokens, but again, poor risk-adjusted returns because you're leaving so much yield on the table. The truth is, with staking, I could get more in a high-yield savings account than I can get when I stake Ethereum. Then we have trading. This is where things start to get dangerous, 10 to 20 hours per week, and that's if you're disciplined. APR potentials range from negative 50% to 300%. Notice that's a negative number. Most traders lose money. You might retain 10% of any gains after taxes, fees, and inevitable losses. There's high upside potential here if you're one of the few who can consistently win. But again, there is terrible risk-adjusted returns because most people get destroyed. And then diving into liquidity pools, we start with active LPing. This is what most DeFi experts teach. 7 to 14 hours per week of constant monitoring, rebalancing, chasing new farms. APR potential actually looks amazing at 150 to 250%, but here's the killer. You only retain about 20% of those earnings due to impermanent loss, failed transactions, and timing mistakes. There's decent upside potential, but poor risk-adjusted returns because you are having to work like it's a full-time job for returns that you could get elsewhere with less risk. Now the next one, there's passive LPing. This is what we call the Goldilocks strategy. 2 to 3 hours per week, 60 to 80% APR potential. You retain about 80% of your earnings. There's high upside potential because you're still exposed to token appreciation, and there are excellent risk-adjusted returns. As you can see, passive LPing clearly outperforms every other strategy when you look at what actually matters: time efficiency, consistent returns, and capital preservation. The choice becomes obvious when you actually look at the facts behind each strategy. So now you might be wondering, if passive LPing is so superior, why isn't everybody doing it? Now that's a great question. There are 3 reasons. First, it requires a systematic framework. You can't just wing it. You need specific protocols, risk management rules, and optimization strategies. Second, it requires access to real data and analytics. You need to know which pools are actually profitable, which ones are traps, and how to time your entries and exits. And third, most importantly, it requires experience. The difference between a profitable liquidity pool position and a costly mistake often comes down to the subtle details that only come from years of trial and error. Now here's the thing. Every strategy I've shown you today works. You have all the information you need to understand why passive LPing is superior. But here's what I've learned after 4 years of doing this and helping thousands of investors. Information without implementation is completely worthless. I've attended boot camps where they fill your brain with information, and then you go off on your own to implement it and you don't even know where to start. You might be thinking, this sounds great, but can I really do this myself? And that's exactly the right question to ask. Let me be completely transparent with you. Could you figure out passive LPing on your own? Probably, eventually. After paying the 40% ignorance tax for a year or two, after losing money to bad pools, failed strategies, and costly mistakes, sure. But here's what I've discovered. It's actually cheaper to do it right the first time than to learn through expensive trial and error. And that's exactly why I created what I call the DeFi formula. It's a 5-step systematic approach that takes you from wherever you are right now to generating consistent 60 to 80% returns through passive LPing. Now to break down the system, step 1 is blueprint. We analyze your current portfolio, risk tolerance, and goals to create a customized liquidity pool strategy. This is not a cookie cutter approach. Step 2 is construct. We build your liquidity pool positions using proven protocols and risk management frameworks. This is where most people mess up. They don't understand the nuances of different AMMs, fee structures, and tokenomics. Step 3 is deploy. We implement your strategy with proper position sizing, diversification, and timing, most importantly. This includes everything from optimizing gas fees on specific networks to managing slippage when you come to execute trades. is. Step 4 is manage. We monitor and adjust your positions based on market conditions, pool performance, and risk metrics. This is the 2 to 3 hours per week I mentioned earlier. And step 5 is optimize. We continuously improve your returns through rebalancing, compounding, and strategic adjustments based on real-time data from our platform. Now you might be wondering, why can't I just use the software myself? And you absolutely could. Metrics Finance is available to everyone, but here's the difference. Having access to data and knowing how to interpret the data and act on that data are two completely separate things. It's like having access to Bloomberg terminals. Sure, you can see all the same information that professional traders see, but do you know how to use it to make profitable decisions consistently? What I'm offering here today is something you can't get anywhere else. One-on-one guidance from someone who's been in the trenches for 4 years, who's worked with institutions, who has access to data from 20,000 plus users, and who's seen every single mistake you can possibly make. Instead of spending the next year or two paying the ignorance tax and learning through the expensive trial and error, you get a proven system that's already working for sophisticated investors. But now I want to talk about the ROI and returns. If you have a $100,000 portfolio and you're earning 20% returns, that's $20,000 per year. With our system generating 60 to 80% returns, you're looking at $60 to $80,000 per year. The difference pays for the coaching program 3 to 4 times over in the first year alone. But more importantly, you're eliminating the 40% ignorance tax. On a $100,000 portfolio, that's $24,000 per year you're no longer leaving on the table. Here's the thing. We can only work with a limited number of people at this level. This is intensive, one-on-one coaching over a full year. I'm personally involved in your strategy development and optimization along with my full C-suite team. And with 2025 being the final bull market year, timing matters. Every month you wait is another month of missed returns and another month closer to the bear market conditions, which we also have a strategy for. But I want you guys to remember, I'm not just some YouTuber teaching theory. I'm running the largest LP analytics platform in the space. I see data from 20,000 users every single month. I know which strategies work, which ones fail, and why. I've consulted with funds managing millions of dollars to tens of millions of dollars. I've seen what works at scale and what doesn't. And look, I understand you're skeptical. You should be. There are a lot of people in the space making big promises they can't deliver on. There are a lot of people in the space trying to scam you and steal your funds. But I'm not promising that you're gonna get rich quick, nor will I take custody of your capital. I'm not promising 1,000% returns. I'm promising you a systematic, sustainable approach to generate 60 to 80% APR through passive LPing while retaining 80% of your earnings. That right there is realistic. That right there is achievable with the right input, and that's exactly what our system delivers. So here's where we stand. You now understand why passive LPing is superior to every other DeFi strategy out there. You've seen the data, you understand the opportunity, you now have 2 choices. Choice 1 is try to figure this out on your own. Go through YouTube University again and spend the next year or 2 paying the 40% ignorance tax. End up making the same exact costly mistakes that everyone makes, and then hope that you stumble onto a system that actually works. Choice 2 is work with somebody who's already solved this problem. Get a proven system that's generating consistent returns for sophisticated and high-level investors. Eliminate the ignorance tax completely and start building serious wealth in the final bull market year. So if you're ready to implement the DeFi formula and start generating 60 to 80% returns through passive LPing, here's what you need to do next. Click the link below this video and book a strategy call with my team. We'll walk you through your current situation, your goals, and determine if this system is actually a right fit for you. And I will say, this is not for everyone. You do need to have at least $50,000 of capital to make this worthwhile. You need to be coachable and willing to follow a systematic approach. And you need to be serious about building wealth, not just looking for get-rich-quick schemes. But if that describes you, then this could be the most important decision that you make in 2025. So don't wait on this opportunity. 2025 is the year to accumulate capital and the bull market window is closing. Every month you delay is another month of paying the ignorance tax and missing out on the returns that could set you up for the next market cycle. I'm confident this system will work for you because it's based on data, not hype. It's worked for over 250 people. It's systematic, not speculative, and it's designed for serious investors who want consistent risk-adjusted returns. So click the link below right now and book your strategy call. Let's build your DeFi portfolio the right way using passive LPing. The link is in the description. Don't let this opportunity pass you by because your future self will thank you.